Changing a country isn't easy, but change is inevitable. And the choices we make today will shape our country for generations to come. That's why we've published our first book from Australia Institute Press. What's the Big Idea offers 32 ideas for a better Australia, from leading thinkers such as Bob Brown, Sally McManus, Dr. Emma Shortis, and Professor Brian Schmidt. The essays are a roadmap and a reminder that the solutions exist. Australia just needs the courage to implement them. Visit australiainstitute.org.au or follow the link in the show notes to order your copy of What's the Big Idea today.
Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, the Australian Institute podcast where we're talking about just what the hell is going on in the economy. I'm Elinor Johnston-Leake, the senior content producer here at the Australian Institute, and as always, I'm talking to our chief economist, Greg Jericho. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Elinor.
How are we going today?
Super duper.
Oh, very, very good.
Listeners will know that's a complete lie, but hey.
Yeah, if you've been looking at Greg's blue sky, he's not doing so super duper. But, you know, maybe that'll change.
Let's be optimistic about how the glass is nearly half full.
Yeah, it's getting there. Yeah. So, Greg, this week in the news, the government is struggling to get the numbers to change tax concessions on superannuation.
Your plans to double the tax for super balances above $3 million, it's hit a roadblock, or maybe 8 roadblocks in the number of crossbenchers who don't seem to like it.
We remain committed to it. The Senate has expressed a view on that on a couple of occasions, and we'll keep working to implement it.
Currently, earnings on your super are taxed at a flat rate of 15%, which incidentally, and we'll get to this, is below what most people pay for income tax and well below the 45% top marginal tax rate.
This proposal does not change the fundamentals of our superannuation system.
The government's trying to change it so that earnings related to the superannuation balances above $3 million would be taxed at 30%, which is still below the top tax rate of 45%.
Because this is one of the ways that we fund the cost of living help.
So, Greg, can you first give us a quick rundown of what superannuation tax concessions are?
I mean, as you said, basically it's around how much either the earnings in your super are taxed, or when you put money into your super, at what rate that is taxed. And essentially, as you point out, they're taxed at 15% flat rate, and this is much lower than it would be if it was just your income, especially if you're a high income earner. And how we sort of consider them, and how the government considers them, certainly how the Treasury considers them, is they're basically tax breaks that are a cost to the government. They say, okay, instead of taxing your super earnings or the money that you're putting into your super at the same rate we would if you declared that on your income tax form, we're giving you a tax break, and so we're kind of going to forego all that revenue.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of revenue. Like, for example, the government in this financial year estimates that we're looking at about the government foregoing around $51-52 billion in revenue to try and give these tax breaks to people on their super, to try and encourage people to put money into super. It's a really expensive scheme, and the problem is most of those benefits are going to the richest.
So if they're so expensive and they mostly benefit the rich, then why do these tax concessions even exist in the first place?
Well, I mean, the theory is kind of good. So we've got the compulsory superannuation system, which everyone's pretty much aware of, where your employer has to put in a certain amount of money from your wage into super. At the moment, it's 11.5%. In July, it's going to go up to 12%. But what the government has also realised is that if you've got a superannuation system and you want to get people to put more money into super, you kind of got to give them a little bit of encouragement, give them a bit of taste. And so what they do is they're right, you put money into super, we'll tax that less, and the earnings you'll get on your super will be taxed less than the earnings in your income. And so that creates an incentive to go, oh, actually, I should save more, and I'll put more money in this. And the hope is that people who would otherwise be on the age pension, because of these tax incentives, have been able to save so much that they actually no longer need the age pension when they retire.
Yeah.
So the government doesn't have to give them the age pension, doesn't have to pay money that way. So it's kind of it's a little bit, okay, instead of paying money when you retire on the age pension, we'll basically give you a tax break now.
So you can save yourself.
Yeah. And the critical thing is at the moment, the age pension costs a bit more than all of these tax breaks. The age pension costs, we're getting around 60 billion. These tax breaks cost about 52. But if you look at the intergenerational report, which comes out every 5 years and forecasts what's going to happen over the next 20, 30 years, pretty much by sort of end of next decade, the cost of these tax concessions is going to be more than the age pension itself.
Yeah,
and
so kind of completely against the point of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's basically, as I say, you can decide to spend money or give up getting money. And you give up getting money because you think that will ensure the benefits
means you won't have
else.
To spend as much
yeah,
money.
But a good way to think about it is, okay, who's getting all that money? With the age pension, it's people who are lower income, middle income, people who are just kind of getting by.
Yeah.
Who's getting most of the benefits of these tax breaks? Rich people, very much the rich people. I talk about the 52 billion, or 20 billion of that is this year going to go to the richest 10%. $20 billion in tax breaks.
For the richest 10%.
For the richest 10%, so they can supposedly be able to get some help saving for their retirement so they don't need to go on the age pension.
Now you say,
which they were never going to be on in the first place.
You say supposedly. Is that mostly what this is used for, to actually save for retirement?
No. Well, look, not if you look at the total. No, most of that 52 billion is not being used to save for retirement, or to put it a better way, it's not been used to help people not be reliant on the age pension.
Yeah.
Most of this money, especially that top 10% who are getting the 20 billion, most of it is going to people who are never going to be eligible for the pension because they've got far too many assets, their income test, all of that. They would fail it, so they wouldn't be qualified for the age pension. They already had heaps of money for retirement to have a very, very comfortable retirement. But the government started, you know what, you need a bit more help.
Yeah.
For what? Because to get them off the pension? No, they were never going to be off the pension. To have a comfortable retirement, they were already going to have that. So it is just a tax break for no good reason.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as I say, the theory behind the tax concessions are good because, yes, you should incentivize people to save. You give them a tax break because they can't access that money for maybe 20, 30, 40 years. So it makes sense that you're given a tax break. The problem is accountants saw this and went, beauty.
Sort of rub their hands together.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you've got any sort of wealth at all, any sort of income, and you've got an accountant, you can bet your life your accountant is saying, so how about you put some of that money into your super? You'll actually get a tax break for it. And, the government's
Bob's
basically giving you free money. So take it.
So then on the other side of the coin, if Australia is spending so many billions on the age pension, how's the age pension going? Is it actually doing an adequate job in servicing?
Well, yeah,
the
this
needs
is
of
the
all
thing.
the-
We say
yeah.
we're spending a lot of money on the age pension. Yes, it's pretty much the biggest expense in the budget, other than sort of the money that gets sent to the states for various things. And that doesn't mean it's the best or the greatest, because one of the things we can do is look at two figures basically that tell us whether it's working or not. First is we can compare it in sort of relative size to average incomes. And the reason why we can do that is then we can do it for a whole lot of other countries and see, okay, so Australia, once you take away taxes and things like that, the age pension is about a third of average earnings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Really low. But you think, oh, well, I guess that, we're spending a hell of a lot of money. That mustn't be too bad. No, compared to everyone else in the OECD, those, I think it's 38 or 39 advanced countries. I've added a couple, so I always lose count now. 38 or 39 of basically the richest countries in the world. We come second last.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
Second last. Basically, Australia is the second worst place in the advanced economies to be on the pension. Because the reason why we compare it to average earnings is because average earnings is a good indicator of kind of what you need to have, basically at least a comfortable life.
The cost of living generally.
Cost of living, everything. So it's pointless to compare it with, say, what is the value of the age pension in US dollars, and we'll compare everyone's pension to US dollars. And so you look at what it is in France or in Liechtenstein or wherever, because, well, the cost of bread is not the same.
Yeah.
The cost of rent, the cost of everything is not the same. So if you compare it to relative average earnings in each country, that gives you a real sense. And Australia's terrible.
Yeah.
Worst. And then the other factor that you can really use to work out whether the age pension is any good is to look at how many people who are of retiree age who are living in poverty. And the most recent figures we've got, Australia, about 23% of retirees are living in poverty. And that is the 5th worst in the OECD.
Is that all retirees or just retirees on the age pension?
That's all retirees. People over the age of 65, 23% of them are in poverty. Now, we know because people in low-income households, low-wealth households are likely to be on the age pension, and so it's a good indicator that if you really depend on the age pension, there's a damn good chance you're going to be living in poverty. And so you've got 5th worst poverty, 2nd worst pension. They're not unconnected, shall we say.
How did it get this bad?
Well, because we have now had a good 30 years of thinking that, our retirement system's great because we got the superannuation guarantee, so all problems solved. We can have and look at how much the superannuation guarantee is costing. We're really contributing to retirees. And as a result, the focus has been on, I think, demonizing people on age pension in a sense, because you think about the two categories of retirees that we always hear about. There's those on the age pension, pensioners, and then there's the glorious, wonderful, self-funded retirees who are the gold standard. Oh, you're a self-funded retiree. Oh, good. You're not a drag on the government's purse. No, what you've done is take advantage of massive tax breaks. So you're not self-funded, you're tax break funded, which is still money from the government. And yet they're kind of held up as, you can't hurt the self-funded retirees. They've done the right thing. They haven't been reliant on government.
By their bootstraps.
And the reality is most of those self-funded retirees are quite wealthy and have taken advantage. And I don't say this in they've been bad in any way, because the system is set up there. What are you going to do? Say, oh, no, I'm not going to take advantage of this tax break that has been set up for me by the government? I mean, that would be silly. But it's a case the successive governments have set this up to basically benefit the rich. And the big problem is the government at the moment is trying to make a very small change, and it probably won't get through.
99.5% of people with superannuation are unaffected by this reform.
The concern from crossbenchers is from taxing unrealised gains.
This is a policy that should have been doomed from the start. To begin with, it was a broken promise.
We know that our political opponents are digging in for people who've got more than $3 million in super. They're digging in for long lunches and bosses. We're for cost of living help and strengthening Medicare, and we've got to pay for it somehow.
So, Greg, can you just quickly recap what the changes are they're trying to make and why are they struggling to get support?
Yeah, basically what the government has been trying to do, and they have been trying for a while now, is reduce those tax breaks, essentially. So instead of being taxed at a flat rate of 15%, once your superannuation balance, and I know, Elinor, because you're at that certain age, you'd be thinking about this figure, $3 million. Once your super gets $3 million. Yeah, I know.
I mean,
it's achievable.
Maybe
aim high, Elinor. Aim high. Once your super balance gets over $3 million, any earnings that are associated with that amount over $3 million. So let's say it really gets confusing, but basically everything, if you've got a super balance of $3 million, all the earnings are taxed at 15%. If you go over that, all that bit over, the percentage of whatever that is, that percentage of the earnings will be taxed at 30%. So it's been painted as, it's been doubled. But it's, as you said at the start, what's the highest tax bracket?
45%.
45%.
Yeah.
So it's still 15% less than if your earnings were coming from income. So it's still a tax concession. It's just not as big a tax concession. And it only applies to earnings associated with funds over $3 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here's the thing. That $3 million, it sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it?
It certainly does, yeah.
Even in this economy, $3 million is a lot of money. And let's be honest, it is. The average super balance for people in their 60s, so from 60 to 69, is around $370,000.
Wow. So about,
we're talking
a tenth.
Basically 8 times that.
Yeah.
You're getting to 3 million, or if you want it in percentage terms, once your super balance is 715% higher than the average, then your tax break is going to be halved. You're still going to get a tax break.
Yeah.
It's going to be halved, and only on the earnings that apply to the fund over 3 million.
Yeah.
So all of the earnings that in your fund that go up to the first 3 million that can be associated with that still get the 15% tax. So
really,
how many people are we talking here? Have a guess. Come on.
Oh, like 1% of people?
Oh, massive exaggeration. You got it out by you were overestimating by double. 0.5% of people, the 17 million people with a super balance. We're talking around 80,000 people.
Wow. Yeah.
80,000 out of 17 million people with super balances have to worry about the fact that their earnings applied to their super balance above $3 million are going to get less of a tax break than they were, but they're still getting a tax break.
So it sounds like a very conservative policy change, really. So why are they struggling to get support for this?
One of the reasons is rich people were very powerful and very good at running scare campaigns. The Liberal Party's against it, Conservative media against it. One of the things within that as well is the government is saying also we're going to tax a thing called unrealized capital gains. And those unrealized capital gains above $3 million, if your fund is above $3 million, going to get taxed at this lower tax concession. Now, what are unrealized capital gains? Think of it in this way. If you bought a whole lot of stocks, share market stocks or something, and let's say it cost you $50,000 to buy all these stocks, and the stock market's gone well, everything's going up, and now your share market holdings is worth $100,000. So you're $50,000 richer.
Yeah.
But you don't pay any tax on that because it's unrealized. You haven't sold it. As soon as you sell it, you've made a capital gain of $50,000. And if you've held it more than a year, don't worry, the government will give you a 50% discount on it anyway. But what it means is very wealthy people, and here I'm talking people like Elon Musk, like Jeff Bezos and all. When you hear reports of them saying they've got $400 billion, that's $400 billion mostly in equity in the value of the companies that they hold. They don't pay any tax on that because they're not going to sell their shares in Tesla, because as soon as they sell them, they have realized their capital gain and they have to pay capital gains tax or income tax, depending on how they're structured. And so you think, oh, well, that's fair. It's not real money. It could go down, could go up. But the thing is, what you're able to do is you're able to go to a bank or a lender and say, hey, I've got $400 billion in wealth in my Tesla shares and that. Can you lend me money against that? And so you can use those unrealized capital gains banks will go, yeah, that's real money. That's great. Yes, I will treat that as real money. And it's the same even if you're not a billionaire, but you can go, oh, look, I've got all this unrealized capital gain. Can I borrow against it so I can take out another home loan to buy an investment property? And banks will go, yeah, great. We'll treat that as real money. But when it comes to paying tax, it's like, oh, no, that's not real yet. It's unrealized. And so what the government is planning to do is, in a sense, tax those unrealized gains in your superannuation that are above 3 million. And that has, again, become this huge thing of, oh, no, you're coming after people's farms and businesses. And if
it's
you're
always
thinking,
the farms.
why are they coming after their farms? What have farms got to do with super? Here's the thing. Some farmers, I'm not going to say, well, we're talking 80,000 people who are going to be affected anyway. What they're doing is they're putting their business, putting their farm in their super fund. And you think, well, why would you do that? Well, because we've just been talking about all those tax concessions. I will put my farm in my super fund so I don't have to pay the tax that I would have if I, was just treating it as a business. And now the government's going to reduce the tax concession. Oh, you're coming after my farm. It's like, no, we're coming after people's superannuation funds who are rorting the system by putting their businesses in their super funds. That's not the purpose of super funds. Super funds are to retire on, and also let's go back to it. Why have we got these tax concessions? So that people won't be reliant on the pension, not so that you can put your farm or your small business in your super fund and say, oh, that's my super fund. It needs a tax concession to help build up its, and it's so it really is a sense of, one, affecting small, very small, 0.5% of people who've got a super fund, the very richest, the 80,000 biggest, that is contributing a massive cost on the government, which means they basically are spending, there are, now I know people always say, oh, the government can always borrow it, and I agree, but, one of the ways we can get around that hump is actually if we do raise more revenue, that means government can do things like raise the rates of the pension, raise the rates of jobs, so you can actually lift people out of poverty rather than giving gifts to the richest. But what we're seeing is this massive fear campaign. Oh, you're coming after people's farms. You're coming after their business because, the poor struggling farmer. Why is, and, most people are going, well, I can't put my income, all my income into super and go, oh, well,
I get a tax concession on that.
Way.
Yeah.
And it really is, I think it's been painted very cleverly by the critics as, you're attacking farmers. I've seen some journalists, conservative journalists saying, oh, you're coming after grandmas. And the reason being, because generally the male partner dies first and his super might have been really big, goes to the widow, who now combined has more than $3 million in super, and, she's going to lose her tax. I'm like, she's got $3 million more than, and also she's probably about 75. What does she need this money for? And this comes back to the other thing. We've seen reports, the Fin Review did a disgraceful column, which essentially was like, they're robbing my kid's inheritance.
Because that's what super is for.
Exactly. And this is a real problem, I think, that we've seen over the last, 20 years, where super has become not viewed as this is something that I'm going to live on when I retire, and I'm basically going to run it down until it's nothing, And so basically when if I'm lucky enough to make it to say 85, 90, I'm on the age pension, and who cares? I'm not doing anything at this point. I'm not going on big trips anymore, mostly. You've done all that in your first retirement period. Now you're basically just, relaxing and watching TV and doing things. You're 90. I mean, yes, there are some really great, energetic 90-year-olds, but they're not racking up huge expense with their activities generally, you know. They don't need $1 million to get them by. And that's how super was meant to be worked. Instead, what we're now getting is people saying, oh, I might actually have to eat into my equity. Like I can't just live off the income from my earnings of my super. I might actually have to touch the capital. It's like, yeah, that's what it's meant to be done. Yeah. Instead, they go, oh, no, that's the inheritance for my grandkids. And it's like,
well, then why is it in your super?
And also, why are we giving you a tax break to be able to give an inheritance to your kids? There is no public policy benefit to that. If, you know, as I say, let's go back to it. Why do you give concessions? So that people will be less reliant on the age pension, so they're less, government doesn't have to spend as much money on them. It's a perfectly good reason to give tax incentives because it actually does deliver a public good.
Yep.
People are less reliant. If people are less reliant on the age pension, then theoretically we can actually lift the rate of the age pension so that, you know, we can make it better for people who are on age pension. Be better than second
worst in the world,
exactly.
In the OECD.
But if it's become the point that the cost of doing that is now bigger than the age pension, and also these people are not the ones who are ever going to be on the age pension, so all of these tax breaks have not changed how much the government's going to have to spend anyway, because Gina Reinhardt was not going to be eligible for the age pension, but
I shudder to think of what her super balance is.
And it's such a distorted system. And so it's a case of, you know, we really need to look at it. What's happening at the moment, crossbenchers in the Senate are wavering due to this fear campaign. This has actually been a very small thing that the government has tried to do. It's only going to raise about $2 billion, which in the context of, you know, we're talking $52 or $20 billion going to not a lot, but it's getting blocked, and hopefully we can actually get some sort of outrage about them blocking this, because it is a disgraceful fear campaign. It is not going to hurt. You know, 99.5% of you can go to bed at night and not give a damn about this thing because it's not going to affect you at all. You know, some people saying, oh, but they're not indexing it, so sooner or later we'll all have over $3 million in our super. I'm like, really? No,
not that soon.
You know, like my wife has been a teacher since she was 20, and I can tell you, $3 million is nowhere near where we're looking at. So let's put an end to this kind of fear campaign, because if the government can't even make a change, that's only going to affect 80,000 people.
Of the wealthiest people.
The wealthiest people. So 0.5%, so not even the 1%, the 0.5%. If that even can't be done, then that really bodes pretty poorly for public policy and also our society. It means that our society is going to get more and more unfair and more fractured.
All right, well, that's probably all we've got time for today. Shut up, Greg.
What a positive note to end our readers up. No, get angry, get out there, support the changes, don't accept fear.
If any crossbenchers are listening.
Yep. And, you know, that they should be.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Really important chat, I think. We got to really care about these changes, especially when I think the government is actually trying to do something good and it's getting blocked out of fear. Really good to talk about it. Next week, the big thing is on Wednesday next week, the latest inflation figures come out, and that's pretty much the last thing we need to look at in terms of, are we going to get an interest rate cut in February? So that'll be a big one. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This episode of Dollars and Cents was recorded on the 23rd of January, and some things may have changed. My column, looking at all of the horrific figures related to these superannuation concessions and also Australia's poverty, can be found on the Guardian Australia site. For much more research on the inequality of our tax system and the need to repair the superannuation tax breaks, go to our website, which is at australiainstitute.org.au. My Blue Sky handle and the handle I use on all social media is at GrogScammer, and Elinor is at Elinor Johnston Leak.
Yeah, sure is.
That's an easy one. No underscores at all there on Blue Sky. It's just right out her name.
It's all blue skies. Yeah. Yep.
Remember as well, you can get in contact with us via email, which is podcasts at australiainstitute.org.au. That's podcasts with an S. Please send us any feedback, any questions. Also leave ratings, give us a 5-star review. Always wonderful if you can do that. Music, as always, by Blue Dot Sessions. Everyone have a great week. We'll see you all next week.
See ya.